Welcome to the Leading Lane podcast for real estate pros by real estate pros with your hosts, Ashley Frederick and Stephen Birch. If you're looking for an honest, authentic, and raw perspective, you found it.
Welcome back to our Leading Lane podcast with Stephen Birch and Ashley Frederick. We're excited to have you here today. And we're going to talk a little bit about burnout, and there's all kinds of things that might mean to people. And we thought we'd kind of delve into how we get burned out, things that maybe we're doing that we shouldn't be doing, ways to avoid burnout, and what we can just do to maybe help each other and our industry to avoid burnout a little bit more.
Yeah. So I know that you're going to try to cue that over to me, but I'm going to ask you, have you experienced burnout before?
Every day.
Well, at least you're honest, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
I mean, there.
One is recognizing it.
I think there is a point of burnout of like everyday, day-to-day things, but I can tell you that in business, there's probably been like twice that I actually felt if I don't do something different, I cannot continue on the path that I'm on.
Yeah. And I think that you're correct. Like, I know we're trying to be funny with it, but like every day there is almost a burnout. And I think it's so important that you have to recognize that. I have to recognize that and feel that. Because once we have that feeling, or hopefully we can start recognizing before we get to that point, but that's when, the systems come into play. That's when it's really being able to look in the mirror. I think it always starts with first looking at yourself, like, what are you doing or what are you not doing, right? Like, what can you do in order to help yourself so that your future self is not going to continue to go down this path of the burnout and really it's complete shutdown. I know for me, like, this is before I hired Rebecca Mountain, my high performance coach at the time. I was just going. And I felt that that's always what I had to do. I had to be the first person into the office. I had to be the last one. I had to hustle. I had to grind. But it came to the point where like I wasn't sleeping, or I would sleep for a little bit and get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then go to the office and work on these things. But whatever these things were, I didn't know what they truly were because I didn't have a written out itinerary or to-do list of things that needed to be done. I was just kind of going with the flow of everything. And so for me, it was like, when I started going to the office at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I was like, this isn't healthy. I'm not getting my sleep. I'm not getting me time. I then turn over into, not getting the healthy food and the quality food that I'm supposed to. I'm not getting the movement and working out and everything else that, you need to be able to have a clear mind, which then that all rolls over into, being a little snappy, maybe being a little sassy at times. But definitely I had to make a choice. I had to make a conscious choice that I needed something to help me identify what I needed to do. And really it was what I needed to stop be doing in order to help myself. So
do you feel that, because I think we're similar in ways, that like the control aspect can lead to burnout?
Absolutely. Like, I think that's probably one of the biggest things is control. It's hard. Like I like control, don't get me wrong, but I've learned that it's not necessarily the control that I like. It's the high expectations, and it's making sure that things are done a certain way. And what I was not doing at the time was not letting go of the control, but B, more importantly, was I was not articulating to my team and my staff of exactly how I wanted things to be done or how I want them done so I can get that end perfect. And that's another thing. Nothing is perfect. In perfect result of whatever the task at hand was. So I think it's, learning that you have to articulate. It's all about the communication. It's breaking it down to the step-by-step process. And there's no too small of step that needs to be recorded to ensure that you can then get the perfect outcome that you're after.
Right. I think too that what I've found over the ability to delegate over time is that sometimes there are people that can do it better than me. And I think that sometimes that's a little hard to swallow. but it's also okay, right? If you find those people in your team that could, we talked about the SWOT analysis before. So if there is someone that could fill your W's as far as your weaknesses or your threats, that then make it now your strengths can become that much stronger because they took care of your weaknesses. Like for me, that was giving up some of the office stuff. I remember when I told you that I did our floor schedule and the blank look on your face was like, you're doing what? And for Wright, it was for me, like, I just made sense because I could make everyone happy and, make sure that Fridays were even. Well, so can someone else. And so, giving that up to our office manager along with, at that point in time, then I just started rolling all kinds of stuff when it started coming off my desk. I was like, well, I don't want to do that. And I don't like to do that. So someone else is going to do that. So I think the ability to recognize, right, if there are things we're putting off not doing because we don't like them, or maybe we shouldn't be doing them, and maybe we should be able to find someone else that can do it for us or can do it better.
Right. And do you find, like, yes, let's use the floor schedule, right? Like something so minute, quote unquote, but something so important in order to run an office, to make sure that, you have staff on hand or people on hand if somebody were walk in, call in, etc. But do you think that once you took that one little step in that activity of delegating that task, that helped open up your eyes of, okay, that's what's the next one little thing that I can go ahead and offload to somebody else? And then as you compound effect all of that together, these now bigger tasks, accounting and bookkeeping, etc., like, to me, much larger priorities and responsibility than floor time. But it's easier to be able to delegate those because you've learned over those small tasks of delegations what you have maybe done incorrectly or you could have done better to make that a easier transition of offloading. So do you find that that's the same for you?
I think so. And I think that it's always a little bit too of like handing something off, watching to make sure that it works. And then when it does, you're like, oh, okay, that was easy enough. Yeah. And to be honest, and you could probably agree with me, but like once I started offloading some of these things, it almost created a part-time position for something. It actually, just the way that things fell, we restructured someone's whole entire role, more or less, to take, probably, I think we figured out like 20 hours of what I was doing into someone else's role. I mean, and if you think about that, me gaining 20 hours back into being a broker and to running my own business is substantial amount of time. And so I think that's where, like, I would encourage people that if you are feeling overwhelmed, that is when that SWOT analysis comes into play. And either that's someone else in your office that plays that role, or that's when we start looking at VAs or, anything that can, or virtual learning services. I also think the really important thing that is going to change is, I think somebody posted that AI is going to take like 40% of jobs or something like that in the near future. Like, is there anything that you're doing right now that AI could be doing? So for me, I like to use it for like write-ups, like real estate write-ups, and I'll kind of put in what I want, the specifics that I want, and it spits something out never quite like I would. It's not the way Ashley talks, but it was a good, basis, and then I can kind of create it myself. That saved a lot of time for me. I remember like write-ups, I used to spend like a half hour like rewording it and doing this and doing that. So I think that we also have to lean into AI a little bit. Like we talk about, it's never going to replace you or I when it comes to real estate. It's still a human interaction. It's a trust matter. But if there are things, even as far as, Canva and, your posts, some people get so caught up on how often they're posting or whatnot. Like, but if you put that over to virtual services or an AI, like, that's more time off of your plate. So I think we have to start to lean into what is really important. And to me, it's being with people, whether for training agents or being with my clients, that's going to outweigh any of this behind the scenes types of things.
Absolutely. And, it's really funny. I think that AI is a hot topic. Obviously, we can't deny that. But an interesting thing that was told to me once before is that if you look at a broom, like a broom is something so simplistic. When the vacuum came into play, the broom was not replaced, right? even though that, I mean, it's a vacuum, like you have to look at it in that concept, right? You still both take a human in order to drive. I mean, unless it's an
Robot.
little Roomba, right? Like, but even then, there's still human
So,
interaction that has to happen with that. And so, if we're so focused on, things being taken away from us, workload, but instead of us leaning into the technology and leaning into AI, like you can flourish your business or flourish your productivity or flourish your life if you were to start implementing these different things and offloading, and so that you don't have to keep everything all up in your brain. And we all like to think that we can remember everything. There is no way that we can remember absolutely everything every single day, every single moment without dropping the ball somewhere. So I like to think of it as that I'm not going to be replaced, but I would much rather be a vacuum than a broom. But I know at the end of the day, the broom is not going to be replaced, right?
right.
I had a mentor told me one time, it was very eye-opening, that she goes, I tell my people, my staff now, there's two different ways in order to be able to get to where we're going, right? Whatever the outcome is going to be. I think we're all used to hearing there's it's my way or the highway. And I think that's poor leadership. And I've learned this through my mentor on here. She said there's two different ways. Yeah, there's my way, but then there's your way. And I want you to be able to see if there's an easier way, a way that makes more sense in your brain. Maybe the person that you're delegating out to has more tools or tech or AI that they can lean into that you're not aware of, that makes the process so much easier. And as long as you get the end outcome, that's all that matters. How they got there has no flip. It does not matter as long as you got the end outcome. So in all of this, I start now telling people what I want my end outcome to be and explaining it the exact way. So is it a certain, am I going to be sharing this on social media? Is this going to be something that's going to be internal for all of the agents? What are my goals with this? And then I leave them with that because I want them to be able to make those decisions and think critically for themselves. So what she told me is, she goes, there's the two ways. So I'll give them the second option that they can go ahead and see, if they can get the end result. But at the end of the day, if they don't give me the end result that I want, then it goes back to my way. So I was like, oh, I like that. So it's not always my way or the highway. You can try too. But at the end of the day, is if you don't get the result, you're coming back to my way until you can prove yourself. So I think that's really cool and a different perspective, because I think we all try to tell people, at least for me, what is that first step that somebody else needs to take? But I don't care what that next step that they need to take. I just care about the end result, and they can work themselves backwards. So very eye-opening.
Yeah, and I think everyone does things different, right? And so what might work for you might not work for me, and vice versa. But if we can get to the finish line the same way, then great. Or do we teach each other something along the way, that you alter something, I alter something, and we got to the end of the line faster, right?
Absolutely.
It comes down to communication. As far as like things that cause burnout, what do you think are maybe like the top two things that cause burnout besides what we've talked about?
So for me, I think it was feeling like I had to physically be in my office to work. I think that's number one. Number two was my response time. Being able to, I don't even know how many flipping emails we get a day, but I felt that I needed to respond very quickly. And if I didn't respond quickly, then I would be letting somebody down. So think about how many different channels of incoming channels of communication that you have. You have your email, you have your text message, all the different apps that you have, social media, like all of these things, people walking in, the snail mail, like all of this stuff is always constantly coming at you. And I think that you have to be the protector of your calendar. You have to be very understanding that not everybody operates off of their email like what you and I operate. The typical person, can take a couple of days to even check their email to where it's on our phone 24/7. But that does not mean that I have to respond instantly back to these people, and I'm not letting them down. So for me, it was that hurry up, and what am I missing out on? It's the constant worrying of what else did I miss out there that's right at my fingertips. And then I would be so focused on that, I'm not actually focused on income producing activities or anything to grow my company.
Yeah, or like you're just, I think like we talked about it before, like being interrupted. So then when you're interrupted that many times, it actually takes you, that much longer. So I think, as far as the respond, I completely agree with that. 'Cause sometimes I think like, I'll come back to that. And then I got interrupted 100 more times and I forgot to go back to that. So part of me has tried, even if I am in my email, not to actually open that email until I feel like I have enough time. Or like I've just put chunks in my calendar as far as like responding to emails. Or like we've talked about, I star my emails and it goes into my to-do list so that if I read one like last week and I was like, Matt, I don't need to respond to that right now. Like that's a week now from response and I start it. But I like what you said about the like protector of my calendar. So I just recently started using Calendly and made me wake up call real fast about protecting my calendar.
Absolutely.
But I like to give myself buffers in between appointments, so even though like, right, say like I have an appointment from 1 to 2, right? But like maybe I have an appointment at 2:30, but I need like 15 minutes to get there or whatnot. Like if someone scheduled a call with me like up until 2:30, like shit, I don't have the 15 minutes to get there. So I have really come to the realization of how I like stack my appointments in my calendar that I actually like, even if I'm meeting with someone at 1, I almost need to block my calendar at 12:45 to like 2:15, because otherwise people can just hop in your calendar and make an appointment. And so even for me, like personal time, right? Like, sometimes like Friday afternoons, if we could, like, I'd love to hit the golf course, right? Well, now I have to like actually put in my calendar, like noon to 5, like not available. And so it's interesting that you say that because that's a new concept for me, but in the same sense, it's also made me realize other chunks of my time. Like I just, like I have one now, like almost every Monday morning, like seller follow-ups, and even if I don't get to it because something else happened, it's there. So I moved it. So like it didn't work at 9, but I can do it at 3 today. So I do think that that's a good point of, being a protector of your calendar and making sure that it is income producing, because it can fill up real fast without, income producing. And I think the other thing with that too is those should be considered meetings, right? So if you're talking to someone or whatnot, I think it's okay. And I do say like, I'm sorry, I have a meeting at 10, and it might be a meeting with myself, but let's be honest, like that time is just as important. So I think that it goes back to that we've talked about like setting boundaries, and we really have to be able to put ourselves first so that we don't fall behind, because, getting 100 emails behind can make you feel burnt out and overwhelmed real fast.
Absolutely. Well, even, like we're talking about meetings, and, I call them me meetings, specifically on Sundays for the next week. But like I used to stack. I mean, you've been privy to this, and I actually did it today because I was stacked today. But I had another call after one earlier that we were on, and I was like, I have to pee. Like, I legit did not have enough time to go to the freaking bathroom to go pee, right? Yeah. Like, and that's not healthy. Like, if I'm not going to go take the time to go pee, I'm not going to take the time to actually eat lunch. And all of those, I mean, that fuels your body, and you are your business. And so therefore, if you're not taking care of the basic necessities of you're truly not taking care of your business. And that's completely counteractive of everything that we're trying to do and trying to be ahead of everything. So you have to make sure that you have that me time. You have to have that self-care time, time to go to the bathroom, right? Like whatever it's going to be, and it's okay. And it doesn't, like, for me, I tell everybody all the time, like, yep, I have an appointment at the time, just like what you said. I don't care if it's my masseuse. Like, I'm okay with that. That's not their, like, they don't need to know who I'm meeting with. And I think it takes a lot of people, some time to understand that you don't have to explain yourself and your calendar to other people to fit them in. That is something you already have slotted in, and be protective of it. Again, because if you don't take care of yourself, like if I don't take my massage and then I throw out my back and I'm out for 3 days straight, can't get off the freaking floor, like that's no good. I'm not going to be able to respond to anybody. So you have to invest in yourself in those types of environments for sure.
I appreciate that, because I used to feel guilty about like getting my nails done. And, like I would just, now I'll even say like to the girls, like, I'm going to get my nails done. I'll be back. But, you know, like for a client, I'll just say I have a meeting, and I used to feel bad about it, but I don't feel bad about it anymore, because if it's 30 minutes that I'm just requesting to do something that, like, right, because everyone looks at your hands when you're writing an offer, or when you're in an office, or, you know, opening doors, whatever that is. Like if it's 30 minutes for my time, like I don't care anymore. Like if it's a meeting, it's a meeting. Like, oh, I'm booked until 2:30 because I had an appointment at 2. I can meet you at 2:45. And so that was a shift too, I think, for me, just realizing that my time is just as important to anywhere else. And 30 minutes here or there, or an hour for massage somewhere, it doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a bad realtor. You know, and I think where that comes into play is this, not just like immediate gratifications as far as emails, but same thing like with text messages and, you know, phone calls. And yes, we always talk about answer your damn phone, like, right? Like we get that to a point, but like, I'm not going to answer my phone if I'm meeting with a client, because that's rude. Right. You know, right. And so I think where that comes into play is that, same thing though, like when I listen to voicemails, I could like get out of a meeting and listen to a voicemail right now. I would actually really prefer to like get back to the office and then listen to the voicemails, because same thing, I might listen to the voicemail in the car and then, oops, I forgot when I got back, where if I'm actually back seated, ready to focus on business again. And I think where that comes to is just, you know, some of these realtors, like other realtors, and I hate when they post in like Facebook groups that I called this person like 3 times and they didn't answer in an hour. Like, okay, well, if I was on showings with a client for an hour, you're right. I wasn't going to answer my phone. And so I think that people need to also just be like a little bit more respectful of each other's time. And you could just say like a simple text like, hey, I wasn't able to get a hold of you, but when you get a chance, could you call me? And then I could probably write you back and be like, yep, in showings, it's going to be a while. But I think that that's the other thing that I think leads to burnout is we have the people that are calling nonstop, or the people that are like, I haven't heard from you. It's been an hour. And my favorite is when they'll call my cell phone twice. They'll call the office and then they'll email me all within a 20-minute time frame. And I don't know how we got to that, if you will. I mean, I can call like the doctor's office or the dentist, and it might take them like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days before I get a call back. Like, it doesn't bother me. Like, everyone's busy. I mean, unless like my leg was falling off, that'd be a different story. But, you know, like, I think that's just where like I'd encourage people, like, maybe be a little bit kinder or be a little bit more understanding to your fellow realtors, you know, or to your clients. Same thing. Like, I'll have some clients that'd be like, it's 3:30. Like, hey, can we look at a house at 5:30 tonight? Like, that's just not going to work. That's probably not going to work. That's not fair to the seller. Mm-hmm. And there are so many people that'll just try to rearrange their whole entire schedule to make the 5:30 work. And I get like we're in a hot market and things can move, but more than likely, like, you have a little bit of time. And I think over time, I've realized that some of those clients might not be for me.
There you go.
And that's a hard pill to swallow for some people. But if someone can't wait an hour for you to get out of I mean, there's been times where I've been like in urgent care and people are like, how come you haven't answered your phone yet? Like, if someone can't understand you're not well, or you're not available, like, imagine them throughout the whole entire transaction. You know, exactly. That might not be a healthy relationship for you. And I think that people really have to start to value their time. And if there are people that I literally call them life suckers. Mm-hmm. I would rather fill my pipeline with people that love and appreciate my time than 2, you know, blood suckers that would ruin the next week. Like, it's just not worth it at the end of the day when it affects your mental health.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that is so huge, is that like the expectations. If you're going to give that at the very beginning, that's what they're going to expect the entire time. So if that's something of your non-negotiables of like, I'm not going to show, like, if you don't have the availability, I mean, there's going to be the spinoffs, totally get that, but you cannot divvy off of what your non-negotiables are to try to appease somebody else, because it's going to compile together. And I mean, this all has a connection here, because what happens if then you go and you make this exception to your rule, your non-negotiable, that you're going to go show and drop everything for them. And then 5 minutes before they decide to cancel on you for whatever reason on their side, right? It's happened. At least it's happened to me. And then from there, you know, like, that's going to, piss you off for the next meeting that you're going to walk into, which then you're not going to be in the right mindset to be able to have that conversation because you had your person that just stole your time away from you, and you didn't have lunch, and you haven't peed for 3 hours, right? Like all of this compound effect of, having your boundaries is all we're talking about. Having these boundaries for different people, like it rolls into the next activity, the next meeting, the next whatever that you're working on. And that's not fair to you or anybody else that you're meeting with, to be able to walk into there and not be in the right headspace to have a conversation with them.
Well, and I think that actually, when you say that too, I think that plays into some really great roles, which we'll need to do a separate podcast on as far as, buyer agency moving forward. That's a fantastic opportunity as far as, people are scared about what this looks like. But if you're actually having buyer consults with people, you might learn real fast that they're not a good fit for you and you're not a good fit for them. But otherwise, if you are having these, there's a cat right here. These sit down meetings, and you're talking about your expectations from day one. Like, hey, I typically don't do showings on Sundays, right? Or I typically can't do a same day showing unless it's, potentially a vacant property. You got to remember that some people have, kids at home, and that might not work for them. I think if we as realtors just were more open with our clients about that, I don't think we'd have the last minute, like, hey, can I see that in an hour, and then get mad and want to move on. I think if we just, moving forward, used those buyer consults to really have an expectation building from day one so that they are fully aware, like, it's probably not, like, it's not going to happen today at, 5:30. I just think that we would feel less stressed, and I think that the buyers would feel like less, anxiety as well.
And with that point, like, how are you supposed to be an expert going into that house? You haven't had time to do any research. You haven't had time to do anything whatsoever. Like, at that point, you're literally being a showing agent. And in my opinion, that's not what they hired you for. They hired you to be working in their best interest. And with that, hopefully by now you would already know what they're really truly looking for to even see if you need to be going look at this house. It may just be something on the whim that they are bored and want to go look at one more to make sure that, solidify the deal for a different property.
If you've done your homework for them, and like they could be like, hey, why didn't you send us this one? And I already did my homework, and maybe in our area we have wet basements. And a lot of times they won't know that. But I looked at the condition report, and the condition report says wet basement. Well, I knew that you guys didn't want to look at a house with a wet basement. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I think they're going to be pretty thankful that they didn't have to take off work. They didn't have to get childcare. They didn't have to do all these things because you did your homework ahead of time so that they didn't waste their time going into the property.
So in reality, like, burnout is really, like, literally you're chasing, like, I'm visualizing right now, a car doing a burnout, trying to hurry up and get somewhere and not going anywhere really fast, but get a lot of smoke, but you have no traction that's going, right? Like, maybe that's really where the burnout came from, and just now being a blonde moment of understanding that.
I mean, sometimes that's how my days feel. I'm just going in a circle, and there's got to be smoke coming from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is happening, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I got no more gas left in me, and I'm just chilling. Like, you're stuck. You're sitting.
Or if you think about it, like, right, like now your tires are bald and you can't function the same. I mean, that's a great analogy. What about like when you
where that came from?
What about when you feel like the ultimate burnout? Like, what happens to you, or what do you try to do to get out of, like, when you actually feel like something's not right, you're not yourself?
So actually, like, when I'm to that point, my body tells me, like, I shut down. Like, I'll get sick. I will be out for probably a week. And I'm just exhausted. It's not like I have cold feelings or a flu or anything like that. Like, I am legit, like, knocked out in a coma for a couple of days. And then it takes me a couple of days to come out of that coma. And I'm not making fun of that at all, but that's truly how I feel. I get hit by a bus and, like, nothing is happening. And so therefore, like, legit everything else that I was worried about now has piled on top of, right? Like, and then now I have to go, not that I got rest out of that burnout coma. What happened then is now I have to get back into it and work extra hard. And so like, again, it's the compound effect. And like now I'm worried about all of the stuff that I have to catch up with. And now all of the stuff, the other things that are coming in the forefront that I needed to, forecast for, it's just a whirlwind of psychotic chaos. And really, now that's why I try to look at what is not the easiest method to get things done, but what is the most effective way to get things done, to where that it does not need my physical manpower, quote unquote, to be able to do something. I want to lean into technology. I want to lean into my staff, not just delegating the task, but have them be able to figure out things to be able to implement to automate as well. Because if I can set up, and that's really how I try to build my business, is set up the business to where, yes, I can show up, but the only thing I really have to do is show up. All the rest of the tasks, everything else, have been automated out. AI is taken care of. A staff member is taken care of, so that I don't have to worry about if I'm sick for a week, or if something happens in the personal world. We know that death is going to happen in the personal world. Like, if I need to take time off, the business is not suffering. My agents aren't suffering. My staff is not suffering with me not physically being there. So I really took and recognized that my big burnout was me physically having to be there, but now it's, how do I physically not have to be there? Like, what is the solution for me to be able to plug in there to ensure that it's still done without me there?
Well, and I think with that, like, right, if you just think about being out of work for a week because you're burnt out and what that does, and then you have to play catch up, and right, like, it almost just like recreates burnout. So, even if you just took an hour out of every day to try to calm yourself, or whatnot, like that hour out of every day would definitely make up for being, out for a week. I think for me, I think it's the same thing. I'll notice it, like, headaches for me are one real big, like, stress thing. So, like, it's normally I start to get a lot of headaches. And as crazy as it sounds, like, I think I also start eating like shit. Like, it's just whatever's fast and convenient. And then, I normally get sick, right? And so whenever I can start to feel those things, it's kind of like you have to give yourself a wake up call. And, people make fun of me because I don't pack it, but my husband packs my lunch and my snacks. But right, I like bring it with me every day. But I learned through, I'll be honest, it was like 2021 when there was no time to pee, which was super not healthy. And I got so sick in the middle of that COVID period of like showing houses from sunup to sundown and, presenting 50 offers, whatever that was. That's when it really started to change for me. And like, that's when I started packing a cooler, and I had a cooler in my car with apples and grapes and water. Cause then I remember like some days I was like full on dehydrated, which also didn't turn out well. So that was a really eye-opening experience for me, that like, you have to take care of yourself. You have to pack those snacks. As funny as that sounds, or I know that people make fun of you and I for having extra water bottles in our car, but do you know how many times that extra water bottle saved me when I hadn't been able to have a drink of water for like 8 hours?
And it's going to be like the movie Signs, right? Like we're going to be, one day these bottles of water is going to save everybody else's lives around us.
Yeah, and then they'll be like, thank you for that.
Myself.
Yeah, as you drink out of your water bottle, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it's a constant. Like, I mean, that's really, I talk all day, like, believe it or not, like, that's all I feel like I do. And so, like, if you're not hydrating yourself, like, it goes again back to
I like challenge myself to drink like 3 of these a day now. But I mean, it makes a difference. I think the other thing for me, we can wrap it up, is I try to plan vacations. So that's also kind of my thing, not necessarily for burnout, but I think that we enjoy traveling. So it's something to look forward to, but it is also something where sometimes like you're forced to leave your environment and you're forced to relax. And then I think when you're at that point, it's even more like, oh, like I really was close to that burnout of not. So like almost if you could prevent it by taking a step away. And I think every time I step away, I think that for me personally, like I'm always amazed by my staff and my agents, because again, it's having to give up control on things and things that I try to do when I'm here. Like if I'm gone, they had to take care of it, or it was, last time I traveled and like letting someone write an offer for me, like, ugh, but it turned out just fine, So I think that there's some reflection that happens when you do travel, and that does help with burnout, I think, because we all should have time to relax, get some vitamin D, spend time, with people that you care about. And then through that, you learned like, oh, I could leave and they could do that. And then you can start to delegate some of those in the future.
Well, it builds that trust, right? It helps with that one little task that you started with, and then you're building that up. And so that that you were out for, 7 days, then, okay, now they have it handled. So what else can I offload? Because they had everything handled on there.
I'll be honest, there were like even things like when I was gone that I was expecting to do when I got back, and I didn't even ask them to do them, and they were done. So like when it is, and it's kind of eerie. I mean, it means we've done a good job, but I think, and again, like I'm just super appreciative of, my office, but like that comes with time. And I think that, it definitely didn't look like that 4 years ago. But I think that through learning, and hiring people to make you do better, I think that those are all things that come into place. But it's fun to kind of sit back and watch people take on things. And I think, the other part of that is I think people take pride in that as well.
Great.
I think when they were like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be done when Ashley gets back and she's not even going to know, like that's another whole sense of like a full circle of things getting to be there and, realizing that it'll be okay at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, and then that shows that they have passion behind the business and what you're doing and what you guys are doing, right? It shows that they're invested into what is going on. If they're looking for, what else can I take off of her plate? To me, that shows that they're stepping up, taking the initiative to be able to help you, which then turns around and helps everybody. So it really is a team effort all the way around. And I think that just goes back to making sure you surround yourself around, good people, and making sure that people understand what your big picture goal is, and you can work yourself backwards so that they can then see their ladder, their steps, how they can help you achieve and accomplish what you're looking to at the end of the day. Cool. Well, great chat. So thank you guys for tuning in today. Please go like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, and tune into our next podcast.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Stay connected for more genuine insights and strategies to boost your real estate career on Facebook, or check out our website. We'll see you next time.